The final chapter of the first season of The Mandalorian, titled Redemption, has been released. I'm thrilled to say it kept up the momentum from last week's excellent episode. Directed by Taika Waititi, it delivered in every way from exciting action sequences to intriguing new additions to Star Wars lore. We open up with the scout troopers that retrieved Baby Yoda from Kuil last week, and they get an extended scene that made me both love and hate them. Their banter was funny, just showing them off as two bored soldiers who don't know what to do. I got a real Tag and Bink vibe from them. They get some terrible target practice in, they talk about how their new boss is just killing his own people willy-nilly. It was all really entertaining, but they also whack Baby Yoda a few times, which is unforgivable. We all agree that might as well be a death sentence in this show, and it arrives quickly in the form of IG-11. He kills them and picks up the child to fulfill his new programming of protection. Meanwhile, back in the city, our heroes are still pinned down and they watch helplessly as the Imperials set up an E-web, and I don't know why, but I get excited just actually hearing the technical names get thrown around so casually. Nerds know what an E-web or an ATST is, but you don't usually hear them called by their actual names on screen. Anyway, the Mando wants to escape into the sewers to find the rest of his covert, but they can't open the access grate. And then Moff Gideon just dumps a bunch of info on us. He reveals that Cara is from Alderaan, which sure explains why she'd be so interested in blasting Imperials, and even why she might lose interest in the New Republic. She's a violent person, and she joined the war for revenge. Without it, she doesn't know what to do with herself. We saw last week that she can't just relax while she's in hiding. She joins a fight club so she can hit something. She's a violent and aggressive person. So is the Mandalorian. So is IG-11. Everyone around the child is. We didn't really get further into the exploration of what that means for his upbringing, but Chapter 7 hinted that being surrounded by violence is negatively affecting him. I think that'll be a long-term thing the show explores. Along with that, I hope we'll see Cara and the Mando learn that violence isn't always the way. And speaking of the Mando, we don't have to call him that anymore. Gideon reveals that his name is Din Djarin and mentions the Siege of Mandalore, which we're about to get to see when the Clone Wars returns in February. But it sounds like the Republic is going to hit the planet hard, because Mandalorians call it the Night of 1,000 Tears. That leads Din to have the full flashback of his childhood, where his family is killed by Separatist battle droids, but is then saved by Mandalorian forces. Not only that, but they're members of Death Watch. I thought that was an awesome touch. I was expecting the Protectors of Concord Dawn or some more noble group, but this does fit very well with Death Watch's goals. They wanted to bring back Mandalore's warrior culture, and they're out there proving that they can do some good in the galaxy. It doesn't excuse the other things they do in the Clone Wars, but Pre Vizsla wanted to be seen as a hero and savior to his people, and that's exactly how Din sees them as he is rescued and flown away from his home. It's concretely laid out that you don't have to be born on Mandalore to be a Mandalorian. You can be raised as a foundling and adopted into the culture, and that's what happened to Din. That's why he doesn't have a signet or house or clan or anything like that, and why it was so important for him to prove himself early on in the series. But back to the present day, Gideon offers them all a chance to surrender, but Cara turns it down, fearing she'll be, quote, uploaded to a mind flayer. I don't know what those are for sure, and Greef claims they were just Imperial propaganda. It sounds like some sort of Force-using interrogator to me, kinda like what Kylo Ren does to Poe in The Force Awakens. Fortunately, they don't have to find out because IG-11 serves as the cavalry coming to save the day in an awesome sequence of him piloting a speeder bike, shooting stormtroopers, and protecting the baby all at the same time. I'm gonna chalk this up to him not quite beating his old programming. I get the logic of destroying everyone who wants to capture the baby, but taking the baby to the fight itself doesn't seem like the best way to protect him. Din and Greef run outside to help, but they all have to eventually retreat back into the cantina after Din is shot in the head. IG-11 is able to remove the sewer grate, and Din convinces everyone to leave him to die because he stubbornly still won't remove his helmet. While they argue, a flame trooper tries to roast them all, but the child uses the Force to keep the flames at bay and then blow up the trooper. That was a very Kanan moment, and I don't know if I imagined this, but the music sounded very Star Wars Rebels to me while it was happening. Probably just because I had Kanan on the mind. Everyone but Din and IG-11 escape into the sewer, and 11 convinces the Mando to remove his helmet since he wouldn't be showing his face to a living thing. And we finally get to see his face. This felt so much like Vader removing his mask to me, and I mean that in a good way. I've been imagining what they would do to Pedro's face to make him look Star Wars-y. Scars, a crazy haircut. I don't know what I was expecting, but when they pull the mask off, it's just a man. A man that looks like he got the crap kicked out of him and then was shot in the head. He looks sad and scared. This is the only scene where we see his face, and I think they used it perfectly. We always imagine Mandalorians to be these unstoppable badasses, but when we see Din's face, he's relatable. But I also just want to say a job well done to Pedro Pascal and his two stunt doubles, Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder. They already built a character that was likable over the previous 7 chapters, and I'd say that's pretty impressive when all we ever got to see was the helmet. And it's a nice moment for Din as a character who has to be at his most vulnerable in front of a droid. Not only that, but the positioning kinda mirrors his flashbacks with the B-2 Super Battle Droid. He's down on the ground, helpless, with a droid that was at least originally programmed to kill standing over him, and he's just gotta trust the droid and trust Kuiil's programming. IG-11 sprays his head down with Bacta and he begins to heal, so they catch up with the rest of the group in the sewer, and then they find what's left of his covert, just a pile of Mandalorian helmets and the armorer. That was very reminiscent of the Star Wars Rebels Season 4 promotional art, which makes sense having Filoni involved in this series as well. I'm just pleased to see a live-action series working so seamlessly with the animated shows. The armorer gives Din his signet, the Mudhorn, now that she sees Baby Yoda and knows that he was aided in his battle with the beast by an ally and not an enemy. She also gives him a jetpack, which she calls a Rising Phoenix. That's a little dramatic, Mandalorians, but okay. And finally, she gives him his ultimate task, what Mandalorians are meant to do with all foundlings. They either train them in the way, or deliver them back to their own kind. Until then, Din is officially Baby Yoda's father. That's an exciting setup for Season 2 of the show, the prospect that we might get to see Yoda's homeworld after a lengthy adventure following clues and such. I'm still a little wary of learning too much about them. I enjoy the mystery, but if we're gonna dive into this, I think it'll feel better if we kind of have to earn these revelations along with Din, if that makes sense. I also think it's interesting that the Armorer's only objection to raising Baby Yoda as a Mandalorian is that he's too young, so I think that opens up the possibility for non-human Mandalorians, which was true in Star Wars Legends. Our heroes leave and the Armorer stays behind to salvage the Beskar of the fallen Mandalorians until stormtroopers invade the smithy. I was sure it would just cut away to the main group as they heard blaster fire, but was thrilled that she not only got to beat the crap out of the troopers, but that she survived. I thought for sure she was a goner, and that furnace kill was so brutal, but got an excited scream out of Molly and me. Din and the others find a lava ferry so they can escape the sewers, piloted by an interesting droid, an astromech with arms and legs. I was excited by that, and then Kara blew its head off, so never mind. The exit is guarded by stormtroopers, and IG-11 brings back his self-destruct sequence to save everyone, which Molly and I called way back in the first episode. I liked that Din went from hating all droids to pleading with his new best friend not to sacrifice himself, but it was the only way. As they exit, Moff Gideon shows up with his TIE fighter, and Din gets to save the day in yet another really cool action sequence. He uses his jetpack to fly up and plant bombs on the TIE's wing, but as is usual with him, it's not like this smooth thing. He struggles to get onto the wing and stay on. He drops bombs. He's been like this struggling action guy the entire series who hurts his fingers climbing up a sandcrawler, who gets bested by Jawas and gets shot a lot. Like I said, he's just a guy. I see a lot of Indiana Jones in his character, which is probably why I like him so much. With Gideon and the stormtroopers out of the way, Greef invites Din back into the Bounty Hunters Guild, but he turns it down for his higher calling of finding Baby Yoda's home. Kara says that she'll stay on Navarro, which frustrated me a little. This is the second time I've begged my TV screen for them to stay together. Chapters 7 and 8 work so well for me because we finally have our cast all working as one. I was hoping that would continue into Season 2. There's still a chance for that because we know Gina Carano is coming back, but I really want her to have more than 3 episodes next year. But for now, the Mandalorian leaves his friends behind, flying the child back to the Razor Crest in a parallel to how he was saved from his homeworld by Death Watch years ago. But as they fly off-world, we return to the crashed TIE fighter, which is like, Of course, I think most people guessed Gideon was still alive, but what I appreciate is that I think the showrunners knew we'd guessed that, so they gave us something more. Gideon cuts his way out of the fighter with the freaking darksaber. I figured we'd see it appear in this show eventually, but not in the first season. And what does this mean? It was mentioned early on that Gideon was a member of the Imperial Security Bureau during the Mandalorian Purge. We know that had to have happened after the uprising that we see begin in Star Wars Rebels Season 4. At that point in time, Bo-Katan had the darksaber, so it makes sense that it would wind up in Imperial hands, but what happened to her? Was she killed in the process? I hope not, because I'm still desperate to see Katie Sackhoff appear to play the live-action version of her character. Maybe we'll get a flashback in Season 2, or maybe she could actually show up to reclaim her blade, or if she's gone, I could see the show and the main character getting more and more entrenched in Mandalorian lore. Din could eventually claim the darksaber to lead his people, which would be a really cool story. To see a foundling with no clan, house, or signet rise up to lead. I think that would work really well with what I hope the entire series is going to be about. What does it mean to be a Mandalorian? Is it the armor? Is it the way? Maybe their creed is flawed, and Din will bring about change like Satine once did. Or he could help the Mandalorians find balance. I see Star Wars as a story of anti-war and anti-violence, but it does acknowledge that sometimes you do have to stand up and fight for a worthy cause. Mandalorians tended to fight just for the sake of it in their history, but maybe they will learn to fight only when their reasoning is just. I don't know, I'm getting way into Season 2 speculation, and that's gotta be a good 11 months or so away. Chapter 8 was a wonderful conclusion to what I would call a very successful first season of The Mandalorian. I think the beginning and end were far better than the middle episodes, but overall, the show was strong. I have high hopes for Season 2 and for the Cassian and Kenobi shows. Now that Disney can see that there is a definite market for this kind of Star Wars storytelling, I hope they continue to increase the production budgets, because I think what few problems I had with this season were ultimately caused by financial issues. But I'll do a review of the whole season sometime next week, because this has been quite the ride, and I can't wait to see what comes for Din and Baby Yoda in 2020. Let me know what you thought of Chapter 8 in the first season in the comments. Next Saturday, Molly and I will probably do a 20-question Q&A video devoted to the season as well, so if you want to ask us a question to be answered on screen, we'll be taking those from our Patreon. We've also been releasing audio commentaries for each episode on our Patreon, so you can get all that at the link in the description. We've done the first 7 chapters already, and Chapter 8 will be out soon. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.